Today's show is all about Maddie, my daughter's favorite. And if you have a picky eater or just anyone at home that you think, they kind of eat like a 2-year-old, you'll love this show because it really is all about feeding picky eaters. That's my Maddie. So we're gonna start with her favorite breakfast, and this really does show just how picky she really is. I tried just about everything that you can think of for breakfast options, and you know, I've pretty much failed on all of them. She didn't like smoothies, she didn't like bagels, waffles, pancakes, you name it. So I finally found something that she loved for breakfast, and we call it her peanut butter bars. So this is a peanut butter bar that has some protein in it. We're gonna start with 1 2/3 cup of oat flour. So that's a really good way to start the day. Even though these look like they're candy bars, they're made with oat flour, old-fashioned oats that are ground up into a flour. So we know that it's whole grain and good for you. 1/3 cup of protein powder. 1/4 cup of sweetener. Just a pinch of salt, so I do about a 1/4 teaspoon. And then for our wet ingredients, we have a 1/2 cup of honey. These are really simple to make. Oftentimes, I'll double batch them and freeze half of it so that I have some ready to go for later. And 1 cup of peanut butter. And you could use almond butter or any kind of nut butter. And actually, almond butter is a really great source of nutrition. Almonds are full of calcium and all different kinds of minerals, so it's actually really great to use almond butter for this as well. Now I'm just gonna stir until this is combined, and a lot of times when I'm making bars or no-bake balls, I'll start by stirring it, and then once I combine it enough, I'll get my hands into it and really mix it. Okay, so that's looking good. Now I'm gonna get my hands in there and bring it all together. You just want it to look like a cookie dough, and that's how you know that it's ready. So a lot of times I'll put some chocolate chips in these. I'll make it also into balls, and we call them cookie balls. So that's another great way to get your kids to get their protein and their whole grains and some healthy fat in. And you know, when it comes to feeding Maddie, it's been quite a journey for me. It really all started when she was 6 months old. The very first thing I gave her was some banana. And I thought that every single 6-month-old loves banana because it's sweet and it's the first thing that they get to taste outside of milk. So you would think that they would just take it and love it. But no, she spit it all out and she made a shuddering face. And I knew that I would have quite the case on my hands after a few things I tried, and she spit every single thing out. So, lo and behold, she turns 1 year old, and that's when you really start to think about feeding them solids. So I started to just feed her, you know, anything that I could think of. So eventually she ended up liking applesauce. So from there, I mixed almost everything with applesauce, and she would eat it little by little. And her palate grew and grew. And to my surprise, when she was about 1 1/2, she was eating everything. Broccoli, cauliflower, you name it, she was eating it. And so I was so proud, and I thought, oh my gosh, I turned my picky eater into a great eater. And you know, then when she turned 2, things kind of started to regress from there. She said, no, Mommy, I don't like this broccoli. I don't like this cauliflower. And everything that on her plate she didn't like, she would just tell me one by one. And then I made the mistake of saying, okay, well, you don't have to eat it. So eventually, she just stopped eating all her green stuff and anything that had any color to it that kind of freaked her out. So I started to just kind of go with what she liked, and little by little I would cut things out, and you know, that was kind of where I made a mistake, but I didn't know any better. This was my first child trying to feed, and you know, I learned a lot of lessons along the way. I also learned that it can be really important to start at the very beginning. You know, I really kind of hand-fed Maddie everything with a spoon, which I think is pretty common. And from watching some of my friends and my sisters who really allowed their kids to kind of independently explore food and try things on their own, I realized that that's a really good place to start when it comes to preventing picky eating. and just kind of, you know, encouraging them to keep going with certain foods instead of stopping them. So now that she's 4, I'm really having to kind of backtrack and say, okay, we're gonna try new things. And although it's not easy, you know, I'm really diligent now in trying to just encourage her to try new things. So what I do is I'll put 1 or 2 things on a plate that she recognizes. And then I'll put 1 or 2 things that she isn't as familiar with. And so then I just say, try 1 or 2 bites of the new food before you eat your other foods. And so we've gotten into this practice where she knows she has to try 1 or 2 bites before she says that she doesn't like it. And so that's a really good way of encouraging them to say, you know, before you say, I don't like this, you have to try it. And so far it's done really good. There have been a few things that she says, no, I don't like it. And then we just move on from there. And then there's been a few things that she really likes. So that's been exciting. So as you can see, I just rolled out the dough and I made it into bars. And you could make these as thin or as thick as you'd like. And then usually I just cut them down into a little bit smaller bars. And like I said, you could put chocolate chips in these. You can even roll it into balls. So they make a really great cookie ball. And that's something else that she likes to eat for breakfast. So these are one of Maddie's favorites. And if you have a picky eater at home, these make a great breakfast snack or even a part of their meal.